Hi everyone, it's Alex, and welcome to this Tuesday session. I'm going to try and do these once a week, maybe twice a week at the most, maybe. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe to this channel. If you like barbecue, like, comment, share, subscribe to Squealer's Delight. That's my other YouTube channel. And also subscribe to the Code Black Slack community, both the Capstone and the regular Code Black tech community. And then finally, go like the Facebook page and join the Facebook page. Code Black, making things happen. All right, so we started on some code last week in the Capstone class, and what we did was we created a method, and I've actually got the code here, or something like the code here. We created our method. Let me make this bigger here so everybody can see what I'm doing here. Okay. Excuse me. We created the method called do something. Tonight, what we're going to do is, and then also what we did was we also were able to call that method in our test project over here. So what we are going to do tonight is we're going to build upon this logic that we have here. Our ultimate goal, we have 4 weeks left. We've gone through 2 weeks so far. What we need to do is we need to build an API client to go out onto the internet, grab some information, we'll go out on the internet, send a message to the internet API, get information back, parse through that information, and then display that information on the screen, okay, to a user. So, and we're only going to use one operation of that web service call just because of time, because there's a lot of stuff on that thing. So what we're going to do, I'm actually on the Slack community right now. So if you're watching this and you have questions, please reach out to me via the Slack, and I will try to answer your questions real time. I've got two screens here, so I've got my example code up over here, my regular code up here, and the code that I have actually working over here. So I'm not gonna show you all that yet. Okay, so what are we going to do? We talked a little bit last week about inheritance, encapsulation, polymorphism, and abstraction, which are the 4 tenets of object-oriented programming. So let's actually put some of that into motion here for reals. So we're going to, and then we also talked about typing, keeping variables and casting variables like they're supposed to be. Keeping numbers with numbers, alphanumerics with alphanumerics, booleans with booleans, and so on and so forth. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to code this first part here, and to kind of explain what our DAO is. What our DAO is a data access object, meaning it is an object that once we create it, it is going to do all of the communication. Like we talked about in class, it's going to do all the communication for the rest of the program for us. So what we need to do is we need to establish a relationship with our API. And let me bring the actual API up here. It's just a college football API here. Okay. And so here we see, and the operation that we're going to be using is this get games one. Real simple, gets a bunch of games. It requires at least the year of the games to be passed in. There's a default regular season value here. Excuse me. And there's a week filter here as well. And then there's some other filters that go along with the message. And to kind of explain how this works is once we get let me click this try it out button here. and execute, and it won't authenticate for me because I've oh, you know what, I gotta put the year in there, and it's gonna give me an error because I have to authenticate against the API, which is good because you don't want an API that is unsecure. Let me explain what that means. The API key for any API or an authentication for an API is like the key into your house. If you have an API that has no API key, then what happens is anybody that has any proficiency that can grab information from an API can go do so. Point in case. If you remember back earlier this year, January 6th, I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but how did the federal government catch a lot of these people? Well, a lot of those people were posting on in an app called Parler, a social media app called Parler. And what Parler did was Parler used APIs, public APIs, but no API keys. And so what happened was a hacker went into Parler through the API and downloaded a ton of information on these people that were posting on Parler and put it out on blast for everybody in the world to see, including the cops and the federal government and the FBI and, you know, all those in Homeland Security. That's how they catch a lot of people. So the folks at Parler who developed the API were just either lazy or didn't understand what they were doing, because you never create an API for that kind of information and then not secure it. So they built a house, built a door with no lock. That's what they did. So this API has an API key, and if you look here, you see it says unauthorized. Did you forget to add bearer, blah, blah, blah. And you have to actually sign up for an API key for this particular site. It's free, and we'll do that during the class. We won't use mine. Everybody has their own. So anyway, for us to send a request to this API, this is the URL that we would put into a web page. We have the API. We have the operation of the API, which is this games operation. And then we have parameters that we're going to pass to it, meaning information that we're going to send to the API to tell it what we're looking for. And if you notice here where it says year, if you scroll up, there's a year. If you scroll back down, you can see season type. Well, we have season type right here. So all we're doing is we're going to build out an API request in text, basically, and send that text to the API along with our API key. Now let's go ahead and get started with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this information here because it's just for the class and it was just for an example. Okay. And the first thing we want to do is we're going to create what's called an interface. What is an interface? An interface is just a contract that allows you, how do I explain an interface? An interface is a contract with a class, basically, that allows you to get pieces of that class and interact with that class without actually using the original class. It's a mouthful. We'll talk about interfaces, I promise, but I don't want to confuse anybody. So what you want to do is we're going to create a public interface. I'm going to call it ICB data access. And you can always tell if it's an interface because it's prefixed with this I. And usually the name of your interface is going to be the name of whatever class you're going to build your interface for. So in this instance, I have ICB data access. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to create this interface and only put in here what I want people to use in this particular interface. Okay. So what do I want to use? Well, I need a method that's going to allow me to pull back the data from this API key. And actually, let me go ahead and do this real quick, because I'm going to just move this over here so you all can see that. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in my API key. And then do I have that saved? I believe I do have it saved somewhere. I do. It's over here. Let's see. There it is. I just have it in a text file. You don't want to keep them there, but paste that in there. Authorize, close. Okay, now. So I've got my API key in here. So I've put the key in the lock and turn the key. So now, if I come over here to this games and scroll that a little bit and hit execute, what it'll do is it'll go out and it should pull back information on football games for me. These are for college football games, mind you. So here we have the very first one. We all know what week 0 was. It was Nebraska losing to Illinois. So we can see that here it is. This is our information. Week 1, regular season game. The game was at started at 5:20 on the 28th of August. It was at Memorial Stadium in Illinois. It was a Big Ten Conference game. The home team scored 30 points. The away team scored 22 points. And here we have the line scores per quarter. And we see the home team was Illinois. And yeah, and then we have other games here. So what we're going to do, I'll just put it week 1, because if not, I'm going to pull back every stinking game known to man here. I just want to pull back the first week game. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we need to have an interface or a piece of code that will allow us to grab that information. So out there, I think I said this to the class last week, out there in Google land, there's a ton of C# helper libraries that you can use to help you do things that you're trying to learn how to do in C#. And in Java too. I mean, just about everything. So you don't have to try to feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. So what I'm going to do is I know I need to use JSON. Now, what is JSON? JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's just a string of data, and it's passed in. And actually, we saw JSON just a second ago in our API. This is JSON right here. Okay. This is JSON. And sorry, y'all. And so the way that this works is it's just a text. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this information and we're going to what we call parse it out, or we're going to cut it up into pieces, and we're going to stick it into C# properties or variables, so we can use it for what we need to use it for. So we're going to take this text, copy it down. We're going to cut it up into the pieces, and then we're going to place it into C# objects that we can use. All right, so how do we do step 1? Well, first off, at the bottom of this particular web page, and just about any API that you're going to consume, there is always going to be, at least for JSON, for REST APIs, there is a come on thing. I don't know what's going on here. There we go. There is what's called a model. And all a model is it tells you how should the information look that I get back from the web page. What should it look like? So here it is right here. And so what we need to do is we need to build out a model to grab, so that once we grab the information, that our code will automatically stick the data into our fields. So we need to build this out. And it looks like a lot, but it's not. So what we're going to do first is we're going to come over here in our DAO. And actually, I've already got it built out. I thought I got rid of it there. Give me a second here. Let me move this out of the way. I don't want to. Let's see. I'm going to put it there. And we're going to put it there and delete that. Okay, there we go. No cheating, y'all. All right, so what we need to do first is we need to take and create a model. Well, how do we do that? All we're going to do is we're going to do something very similar to what we did with our do something method, except we're going to create properties instead of variables. Okay. And all a property is it's just a variable that allows you to put something in and take something out. That's all a property really is, kind of in a nutshell. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this, and we need to call our class game. So let's create a class, call it game, curly brace open and close. Okay, we're just going to copy this, and we're going to put, now here's one little tip for you. When you are creating code that you need to copy off of, what I like to do is I like to take a comment line or a block comment, and I just paste my stuff in there. So then I don't have to keep doing the alt tab thing here and going back and forth. So now I know what I need to create here. And actually it probably will be better if it's below there. So that way I don't have to keep scrolling up and down. Let's do it below here. Boom. Okay. And then as I go, I can delete the row that I've created if I want to. Okay, so the first property that we need to create is called ID. How do you create a property? In Visual Studio, there's multiple ways to create properties. The easiest way to create a property is using a code snippet. A code snippet is just like the IntelliSense that we looked at last week in class. It makes your life so much easier. And so what you do is you start typing the word prop for property, P-R-O-P. And you see, you get these 5 little pop-ups here that call code snippets. If you hit tab twice, it creates a property for you. Okay. And all you need to do is give it the right type, which is right here, and the name of the property. The public allows it to be accessible immediately. Okay, so just kind of leave that alone for now. So we know that our first property is called ID. We're going to call it ID. Now, in C#, property names should be capitalized. That's just best practice of C#. And if you don't do it, it'll say something to you here. See, watch. If I put a lowercase ID in there and I hover over it, it says, warning, naming rule violation. These words must begin with uppercases. And it'll warn you that way. And if you come down here to your error list, it doesn't give you, it gives you a warning and not an error. Don't worry about this error here. So you don't have to do it that way. You can mix and match, but it's just good practice that property names are capitalized. You don't want to do something like season type for a property name. You want to do season type for a property name. Okay. So the next property that we're going to do is going to be called season. And that's an integer. Week. Now we have a string. So we're going to say string. And we're going to say season type. Okay. Ooh. And I'm just going to go through and create all of these here. Now, like a cooking show, I've already done all of this. And I've done a few other things as well. So let me go, and I'm going to cheat here. No, I'll just go ahead and do it real quick. I'll just show you how quick this can go. I'll show you how quick this can go. Prop, season type, start date. Ooh. Prop, start time TBD. Oh, Boolean Alex. And then, actually, I can just do this too. Let's see. Oh, you remember I said that if you have a good text editor, it's good to use. I'm gonna show you what I use mine for. All right, so let's do this. I'm just gonna copy all of this stuff here. I'll show you how I like to do things. Start time TBD. Okay, there we go. Copy all of this. Paste that in there. Ooh. Paste that in there. And shift. And I'll just put them all as strings for now. Copy this. And I'm gonna get a bunch of errors in here. Okay, so here we go. So instead of this being a Boolean here, this is bool. And put my get set on there. And this is another bool. Get set. You do this if you have a bunch of stuff to put in there. So here's another shortcut I'll show you real quick. Okay, so that's a strings venue. This is an easy one. You can do all the like ones the same way. And then here's what I was going to show you. The keyboard shortcut for this that I'm about to use is Shift Alt and the arrow key. Shift Alt. And you can select multi columns and lines. So these are ints, like that. And then I'll do the same thing here. Boom. See how much time that saves? And then watch this. See how all these H's are the same here? So I'm going to do the same like I just did. I'm going to change these to capital H's. Change all these to capital A's. That's an E. That's an H. And that's an N. All right. Now, what I can do is all the strings. Those are fine. Let me copy my get and setter. Like this, like this. Oh, you know what? Let's not do it that way. We gotta know the types first. Okay, so this is an int. String, this is an int. Okay, so this home line scores and this away line scores, those, and should be an N in there. Those are ones that are arrays of integers. that's the score by quarter. So what that is not going to be a string. That's going to be a I enumerable int, which is it's a generic collection. I think I explained that once before. And this is going to be get set, oops, like that. And that's an int. Those are ints. Those are strings. This is, it says number. Now, this one here, that says number. And this one here that says number. If you look up here in what we had returned, naturally, let's try to do I have to put my API key back in? I do. Hold on. And the API key there, and the authorization, authorize, close that, bring you back. And if we look, we can see that the win probability number is a floating point decimal, which is a float. But see how it's encased in double quotes here? That means that we have to treat it as a string. So that one is going to be a string. Let's copy our getter setter again here. That's a string, and this is a string. Okay. Now this one's going to be an int. These two are strings. That's fine. It's an int. And this is another I enumerable of ints. And we've got that one there. Those are strings. Okay, now we're ready to put our getter setter in here. So we just copy paste. And you notice that Visual Studio will automatically start lining some things up for you. If you're like me, you're anal about how your code looks. I like my code to be organized a certain way. So to clean all of these lines up here, just hit Control K, Control D, and it does it for you. All right. And then we can get rid of this. Now, since we're working with a JSON string, what we need to do is we need to do a couple of things to our class here. First thing we need to do is get it ready to be serialized or deserialized. What does that mean? That, excuse me, serializing is turning something into JSON or XML. Deserializing it is turning it from JSON into something else, like an object or whatever. Okay, so to do that with the JSON and with a JSON object, first thing we need to do is we need to put a data contract attribute up here. And that is part of the system runtime serialization class. And if you look, if I do this, again, just a reminder, if you get the little squiggly line and you're using it, hover over the squiggly line, hold Alt Enter, and it'll tell you if you need a using or not. If you do, it'll put it in there for you. Okay, so that's the first thing that we need. The second thing that we need are data members. And what data members are is they are the actual true name of the JSON object. Okay, so you see how our ID is capital I, lowercase d, but in our JSON, it's lowercase I, lowercase d. We want to be able to reference that so that way when we get ready to deserialize our JSON, that C# knows where to put what information where. So to do that, we need to use a data member attribute. And uses a paren. And so what we want to do is we want to use the we can do it this way. We can use the property of emit default value equals false, like that. But the one important thing is we need the name. And so what we're going to do is we're going to basically put our ID here, and we're just going to copy this and keep going down. And this is season. Oh, come on. Paste that in there. And this is week. And so on and so forth. Now, because time is of the essence for me, and I'm just going to be lazy, I am going to copy all of these here from my class that I've got working, paste them in there, and let me get rid of whether this is required attribute here. I don't need those in there. There we go. All right. So now we've got all of our code in there, and we can deserialize or serialize our JSON using that. So the next thing we need to do is we need to create a in our class here. We're going to get rid of this do something method here. So we won't need it anymore. We're actually going to do something for Rails. First thing we need is we need to establish a communication with our API. How do we do that? Again, we're going to use a helper C# library called HTTP client. That is part of the system.net namespace. And so all we're going to do is start typing here, read only, and we're going to say HTTP client, and you may or may not have it, which it's going to be part of this system.net HTTP using up here, and I'll show you what happens. You get the little squiggly line, hold Alt Enter using system.net HTTP. Just say that, it adds the using up there. Okay, we're going to call it client equals new HTTP client. And what that does is it creates an object, a child object of the HTTP client class. Remember what I said earlier, in the class last week about Mrs. Console? Well, this is Mrs. HTTP client, you know, and she's got things that you can do with her attributes. We're also going to create our URL container, because the URL, if we go back, this part of our URL right here is never going to change. We're always going to use the games URL. Well, actually, we're going to use this one right here. We're just going to use this part right here. Okay. So, who's this here? Somebody's texting me, y'all. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a constant. What a constant is it's a variable or a constant that never changes, right? It's always going to be the same. And we're going to say, we'll call it API URL. And what we're going to do is, because we want this, we want to ignore any of the escape characters in C#. We're going to put that little @ sign right there. We're going to paste our URL in there. Okay, because if you don't do that, C# will recognize these little dashes here, or it recognizes special characters as escape characters. And since we want to keep that from happening, we're just going to put it in there like that. Okay. Finally, what we're going to do is we're going to put our operation name in there. Let's see, game data op equals games. Okay. So if I was putting an API together, the URL, it would look something like this. It would just be this value here. And this value here. Okay. Just like we have right here. So we're already halfway there for the API, that the actual URL that we need. And to do that, what we would do is we would say API URL plus game data op. And that will create our URL that we have here. This is called string concatenation. Okay. And that means just putting two strings together is one. All right. So we've got an HTTP client object. We have an API string and a game data operation string. Now what we need to do is we need to actually give ourselves a method so we can do our block of code. Inside of our class, we're going to create a game return type of IEnumerable. So we're going to get a collection of games. Here's why. You see this? Let me scroll down here a little bit here. When you look in here, there's more than one game. Okay. So let me actually copy this. I think that's copy to clipboard. And let me go over here. And if you look in here, let me put my little JSON viewer thingamajigger. Over here, I don't know if you can see that or not. Over here, you see we've got all of these different numbers here. This JSON returns an array of JSON objects of games. So this is a game right here. This is our model from here to here. This is the first game of the season. This is the second game of the season. And so on and so forth. Okay. Just like over here. You can see this is for game 1. This is game 2. This is game 3, and so on and so forth. Oh, that's game 3. Now, one thing I want you to pay attention to is this. In most programming languages, I shouldn't say most, in a good number of programming languages, a number doesn't start with 1. For like an array or an index of stuff, it starts with the number 0. 0 is 1, 1 is 2, 2 is 3. Don't get too confused. Just remember, when you're working with C# objects that you have a collection of them, like an index of them, you're going to start with 0 most of the time. Now in VB, that's different. VB is different. But in C#, you're going to start with a 0. Okay. Now, here we go. So we go back here to our code. Okay. So we're going to have a collection of games. And what we're going to call our method is get game data. And what we need to do is we need to pass in a parameter our API key and we're going to pass in a model. Do I really need to do that though? Yeah. Okay. Now, for parameters, like here, I can camel case these. See how I'm doing that? These are parameters. And for variables that you're going to throw away, you camel case. Okay. Now, our method has a squiggly line, so that means we're missing something. So what we need to do is it says we need to return something. So just for right now, we'll create a collection of games. And we're going to call it ret games, like return games equals a new list of games. Something like that. And then we're going to say return ret games, like that. And that gets rid of the squiggly line. We're going to replace that, but if you're like me, I don't like squiggly lines on my screen. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually create a method that will create our URL string based on stuff that we put into this model right here. Okay. So what we've got is we're going to create a method called Parse URL. We're going to pass in the model of our game. And you'll notice that I put it as an internal string. That's because I only want the CB data access class to access this particular method. I don't want anything else to mess with this. So nothing else needs to. All the work's going to be done right here on this particular one. So I'm only going to use an internal for this particular method. So what I need to do is I need to have a URL with my default URL. So to do that, we're going to create these two put together right away. Again, there's a multitude of different ways to do this. But what you can do is you can say var op URL equals API string format. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass in 0 and 1. And what that is, what string format does is it allows you to use a 0-based array, as you see here, and put pieces and create a string as you want to, real time with other objects. Or if you want to type something in there, you can too. But since I have my two objects above here, my constant string and my data op, I'm going to put API URL. API URL and game data op. So at a minimum, and I'm going to say return OP URL. So at a minimum, I'm going to have this string passed right here. Now, we know that the year is a required piece of information. At a minimum, we have to have the year. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add, using an addition, a string concatenation operator. There's another term for that. I forget what it is. and we're going to add the year. Now, I'm going to use what's called string interpolation. What string interpolation is basically just another way to build a string. So I'm going to put year equals, and I'm going to put curly braces in here. Now I'm going to actually access my data model class that I've passed in my parameter class. And I'm going to put rec data model season, because that's the year. So now at a minimum, I'm going to have this passed in as my URL at a minimum. See if I go back here, and we can actually run this real quick. Let's just run this real quick. Let's save this. Oh, actually, we need to call our parse URL. We're going to call this var URL equals like that. Okay, so we can come over to our test explorer. And now that we've got this error in here, what we need to do is we need to do a little bit more work here. Okay, so we've got our mock DAO, get game data, and we have an API key and a request data thing here that we need to do. So let's create a class, an input model here real quick. Game. We're going to call it test model. There's new game. And at the minimum, we're going to pass in the season. (2021) week 1. Season type, I think, is regular as a default. Okay, so that's what we're going to pass at a minimum. So now we're going to take that and say test model, like so. And since this is a collection that we're going to get back from our game data model, we can say var actual. Gnat, holy moly. Gnat's trying to eat me up, y'all. Okay. So I'm going to save that. Then we'll come over to our data access class. And let's just test to make sure that we've got it kind of, plugged into each other here. So let's come down here and come up to our test explorer and say debug. See if we can actually pass something into this here. F10, F11, F10. And if we hover over our request game data model and we bullet into there, we've got values here. So we've got a start date that has a really funky looking date in there. We've got season type is regular, season's 2021, and week is 1. Our API key is going to be blank. Okay. So let's stop debugging this. So, because if we try to do anything else, it's going to error out on us. And then, well, actually, let's see. We've got the season, the year. Let's actually re-debug that real quick. Debug. And we'll step back into that. And go here and go and hit F11, F10, F10, F10. And I should have a string right there that matches what I have. Let me copy this. Copy that. Stop that. And if I come down here, I put that in there, and I come over here, Put that in there. They match one another. So what we did was we created a piece of code that will do something repetitively for us. That's why they call it method. That returns a string based on what we pass in. Okay. Let's say I put the year 2022 in there instead of 2021. So let's put 2022 week 5, right? And let's debug that and see what we get this time. I should get a URL that gives me 2022, F10, F11, 10, F10, F11, F10, F10, F10. I should have 2022, yep, right there for the year. So we're dynamically building a URL on the fly. We're letting the code do this for us. We don't have to code this. We're just coding the bits and pieces of it. Let's say I want to create something that's going to allow me to put the oh, we have to put regular in there, don't we? So I'm going to put now what we need to do is we need to put conditionalize this. What if they do put, you know, postseason in there or something like that, right? So what we can do is we can put in a condition in here saying if string is null or empty, meaning it has no value or it's an empty space, and we're going to say rec data model dot season type, which is a string. If it's that, I'm going to use a null coalesce operator. And I'm going to say, using string interpolation again, and I'm going to say season type equals, and actually what I need to do is I need to put an ampersand on here because we're adding onto the methods here. So if we go back, for every parameter we add, that's an added parameter, we have to put the ampersand on there and then append that after the ampersand. So we're going to put season type in there equals regular, because that's the default. Otherwise, we're going to copy that and we're going to put season type equals season type, like that, and put our semicolons. And now if we run through this again, we should have a season type on there of regular. Oh, actually, let's change that. Let's not pass that in there. Oop. Let's leave it like that. I'll put it there. Debug this. Debug that. F11, 10, F10, F11, F10, 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 F10. And now we should have a longer URL with our games, the year, and the season type. Now, our season type didn't seem to come over the right way. Maybe I have this backwards. So if it's null or empty, that is getting on my nerves here. So let's go back and let's debug this one more time. 11 of 10, 10 of 11 of 10 of 10. We can hover over season type and see what it is. It's null. So what it should do is put in the word regular there. And it doesn't. What am I doing wrong here? Let's see here. And season type. If, oh, that's, I have them backwards. That's a Boolean. So now I should get that right way here. Let's explain what I did just a second ago here. Now I should have regular next to it. There we go. Yep. So what I did something backwards here. So this means if string is null or empty, basically in a nutshell, if we pseudocoded this, this would say, if my season type has no value or is an empty string, then I want to put regular as the season type. Otherwise, if my string does have something in it, I want to use the season type that's in there. Let's test that logic. Comment that and put post, something like that, right? And we'll go through here and say debug. 11, 10. Oh. If we look at our URL, here's our post right there, okay? So what we need to do is we need to build out our URL. Here's our URL like this. Okay. So here's your challenge. Okay. Try to build out the team, the week, and the home. Okay. Now, what we're going to do, this is my challenge to you, if you choose to accept this challenge. What I want is I want you to build out the rest of the URL so that it looks like this. Oh, no. I've already got the week there, the team. And team. Something like that. Okay. This, you have code here that will give you, there's code here that you can use as an example. Use Google as a resource. And don't think that you have to type in some really technical term. I'll give you a hint. Here we go. Go to Google and type in C#, how to create a string. And there's a multitude of different ways that you can do this. Okay. Try to get information that's in the last year and a half though. Okay. There's some old stuff kind of running around out there. Great place to go is either to Tutorials Point or to C# Corner. I go to C# Corner from time to time myself. They've got a multitude of different ways to do this in here. Okay. There's a multitude of different ways you can create a string. If you, and what I'll do is I'll actually put that in as a reference for you. It's not the only reference. what I want you to do is I want you to try to create, using this API right here. Don't worry about hitting the API. These are all of, well, I tell you, that gnat is getting on my nerves. These are all of the different things that you can use. And I'll put the API up here somewhere. Okay. All right. So you're going to use the API as an example. So just up here, it'll tell you what your API should look like here. I'm giving you an example here. All right. And all I want you to do, if you want to try this, is create a URL, continue creating the URL, and put as many of the parameters on there as you so choose to. Try to do more than one. Don't just stop at one. Challenge yourselves, okay? Then what I want you to do is I want you to come in here and I want you to step through this code by hitting the debug like we looked at last week. And if you get stuck, go back to last week's session and because we went over it in the class. And I'll just give you a real quick reminder. To debug this test over here, you have to have your Test Explorer open, right click on the test, click debug, and this will put you there. Okay? Just like that. All right. The other thing I'm going to do, and we did this day one, is I'm going to create this in a I'm going to push this up to the master repository, and I want you to clone down. I want you to clone down the master repository. Okay. How do I want to do that? Because you all have made changes to that. Actually, here's what I'll do. I'm going to create a new repository here, or not a repository, a new branch. Branch, and I'm going to call it challenge 1. So create. Okay. And I'm going to push this up. Say, I'm going to push this up, say push, bam. Okay. Now, to get this repository, this branch, let me go back to my, let me close this, close solution, close, switch branches. Okay. So when you come into Visual Studio, you'll probably see something like this. Number one thing you need to do is you need to do a pull from the master repo. That will make sure you're pulling and you're working with the latest code on master. If you don't do this right, you're gonna get an issue. You're gonna have an issue. Then what you need to do is down here in Visual Studio, click down here where it says remotes. You should see, actually, let me get rid of that Swagger import one here. Let me get rid of that branch real quick. Delete branch. Yep. Wait, no. Do I need that? Do I need that? Let's see what I have in there. Swagger import. I probably can. Well, here's what I'm going to do. If you all get stuck, ping me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these branches real quick. So not to confuse anybody if you so choose to do this. We're going to get rid of class branch, delete that one. Yep. We're going to get rid of swag import. Oops, sorry. Yeah, we're definitely going to get rid of that one. Stash and continue. Remotes, delete this branch. Yep. Do those changes. Yep. And then delete that branch real quick. That's fine. So we should only have 2 branches. So if I go back over it here, refresh this, I should only have, yep. Go by repos. Just doing a little cleanup here. Should only have the 2 now. Yep, okay. Here's what you're going to do. You can do this one of 2 ways. First thing I want you to do, and this is going to be the cleanest way to do it, is I want you to go over to your repo. No. Yeah, let's do it this way. What you're going to do is you are going to definitely do a pull on the master Code Black Learning repo. So do a pull. And what that does, I've checked in some code there. It makes sure that you get the code that I've put out there, because I've made quite a few changes here. The next thing you need to do, if that works for you, come over here on the bottom right, click where it says master, go to remotes, right click on challenge 1 and say checkout. Okay. What that will do is it will give you all the code that I just checked in this challenge branch. So then that way you'll see this live sessions, base code, live session 3, and that has all the code that I just did and the challenge that I put out there as well. See, if I go back over here to base code, go to Code Black DAO, you'll see the model in here that we worked on. You'll see the challenge in here that I put out there, right here. Once you do that, if you do that the right way, you'll have all of this code that I have that I've been working on tonight. And then once you make changes to it, just save it and then come to class and we'll talk about it. Or shoot me a chat on Slack if you're stuck, or if you are, if you have if you think you got it done, let me know too, and I'll take a look at it. This is only going to be on Slack. I will not be checking my email. You need to look on Slack to see the answer to the question once we get to a point. And what I will do is when we come to class on Saturday, I will go over this right here. So hopefully, and I'll send an email out. Actually, I'll send an email out tonight to everybody, letting everyone know. And I see Curtis there. Putting out a challenge tonight. And so if you get stuck, just shoot it on Slack. I will send out the video via email as well so you can see. So I look forward to seeing if you take this challenge on. Don't worry if you get stuck. Okay? We're going to talk through this, and we're going to, get you kind of aware of what's going on here, hopefully. So until next time, hopefully this found you well. God bless you. I hope to hear from you all. Today's only Tuesday. Don't wait until Friday night, because, bruh got a wife. Friday night's date night. Saturday afternoon is, brunch time. So don't wait. Take some time out. This is not supposed to be something that's earth-shattering. Take some time out, do a little research, and find out how to do it. It's that simple. Okay? As always, love you all. Peace. Take care of yourselves tonight. Get some rest. Take time out to try this, and I'll look to hear from you all. Until next time, peace, y'all, and God bless you.